All right. How's everybody doing this morning? Good. Doing all right? Yeah. Good. All right. So this is now. If you were at the other ones, you know I skipped a few, but that's okay. I'm trying to get everything in that I need to get in. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here, and we're going to talk about the mind. Okay. The big piece we're talking about for this one is cognitive reserve. All right. So what we're going to discuss today is what is cognitive reserve, why cognitive reserve is important, what are the risk factors that could lead to a decline in cognition, share examples of things you can do on your own to build your cognitive reserve, and finally, discuss how rehab can help build your cognitive reserve. All right, so what is cognitive reserve? All right, it's the mind's resistance to damage of the brain. Okay? So cognitive reserve is our brain's ability to face different types of damage, deterioration, or illness, and maintain cognitive function. So what does that mean? People with high cognitive reserve age slower, okay, than their peers, okay? It's our brain's ability to face those different things, okay? And it talks about the decline in different skills. So when we talk about cognitive abilities, we talk about couple different things. Problem solving, okay? Some people are really sharp, but they have trouble problem solving. We talk about executive functioning skills. So those are do you know how to use a stove correctly? Do you know how to use a microwave? Those are kind of your executive functioning, kind of higher level things, all right? Then we talk about your relationships. Do you know how to talk to other people? Okay. Social and emotional engagement. Do you know how to express your feelings? So some of these things are the things that we look at when we focus about cognitive abilities and how you approach different things. All right. So we're going to look at this. Now, I think everybody's heard this before. You either use it or you lose it. It's the same with muscle mass. Okay. If you don't use a muscle, you're going to lose it. All right? So the point of what cognitive reserve is talking about is even though you are getting around and functioning every day, you still need to train your brain. Because at the end of the day, you're still strengthening, you're still learning new things, and you're keeping your mind sharp. All right? So here's a good example of the importance of it. All right, this says 2 80-year-old women have the same brain injury, okay? But one is presenting with more advanced signs of deterioration, while the other is not. After the 2 women passed away, an autopsy was performed. Doctors discovered that both women had Alzheimer's disease, all right? So the question that we all ask is, why did one woman present signs of cognitive deterioration and the other didn't? So the answer is cognitive reserve. Even though both women had Alzheimer's, one woman had more cognitive reserve, meaning neuropathology, life experiences, and environment contributing to the resistance of damage. So when we talk about cognitive reserve, what we talk about is the things in your life that affect your brain, okay? Social engagement is a big one, and especially right now with everything we're going through, that's a huge topic. So do you think that social engagement affects how you feel and how your brain functions? Absolutely. Okay? So that first woman had a lot different experiences and different environments contributing to those things. Okay? If she had not built the cognitive reserve, this would have impacted her ability to talk, to walk, to remember, and complete her activities of daily living. Her cognitive reserve helped her compensate for her cognitive decline. Okay, so compensate is a big word. And when we talk about cognition and different things on that line, we want to make sure that we know, okay, let's say you are very forgetful with your appointments. Okay, well, we want to compensate with that. So what do? We help you design a system that helps you either write them down in a calendar so you can remember them. Okay, so that's a compensation method. Now, they get more in depth than that, and some of them are less. But that's what cognitive reserve is talking about. All right? So cognitive stimulation and rehabilitation won't directly treat the neuropathology of dementia. So we all know dementia's incurable. We cannot change it. You have dementia, your brain is already susceptible to those loss of neurons. Okay, so what are we doing? We are trying to slow down and we're trying to build cognitive reserve. Okay, the more we can build your cognitive reserve, the less you're going to show those symptoms of your cognitive impairment. So we're going to talk about like this a little bit. Now, this is the question everybody always asks. Does age matter? Okay? Scientists believe cognitive reserve is an active coping process that builds up over a lifetime. What you do in life can contribute to it, even at an older age. What do they say? They always say knowledge is power. So the more you learn, the more your brain is stimulated. So, what are the risk factors that could lead to a decline in cognition? How about hearing loss? Can't hear as well. Okay. So now you've lost a communication method. All right. So a lot of times we go down to the next one: sedentary lifestyle, no physical activity. If you can't hear people when they talk, you're not as social, right? Okay. So then we talk about sedentary lifestyle. You know, the more you sit around and do nothing, the more and the faster your brain will deteriorate. How about diabetes? Heart disease, blood pressure. Okay, when you're constantly having those high blood pressures, it affects your brain. Advanced age, low education level. That's why, nowadays you look at the average age of somebody in college, and I think it's in the mid-40s, okay? Because at any age you can learn, okay? So the point is they want you to always be learning something. Try something new. Challenge yourself. Just like your muscles, you can't just do the same exercise the same way every day and expect to gain muscle. It's the same with your brain. You have to try new things, develop new challenges for yourself. Depression, okay? Obesity and smoking are some of those risk factors. So what can I specifically do to build my cognitive reserve? Learn a new hobby. So hobbies are great. It's challenging you. A lot of hobbies are different every day. It's not the same thing over and over. Okay? Learn a second language. So learning another language is a big piece because it really challenges your brain. And it's interesting, my daughter, who is 7, takes English and Spanish class in school. It's an immersion program. Well, at a young age, they're like sponges. They absorb everything so quickly. And she can spit out all these things, and I'm looking at her like, oh my gosh. It's going to take me days to learn what she can learn in a few hours. But nonetheless, I still learn, okay? And same with as we get older. All right, exercise your mind and body together. Okay, this is a tricky task, but as therapists, we're starting to try these things more. Think about it. Let's say you're doing an exercise. All right, you're going to do 12 reps. Can you count backwards from 12 to 0 while you're doing that exercise? Challenges your brain a little bit. You got to think about it, right? But that's just another way, a little tiny thing that you can do to help. All right? Challenge the components of your mind with Rehab's help. So what is this talking about? So there's a lot of ways to challenge your mind, and I have a list of some really nice apps that I'm going to pass out and I will put at the front desk. Okay? Some apps that they tell you a little bit about them too on here. Okay? Brain games, all kinds of things. I think Luminosity is one that's advertised often, okay? But there's all kinds of things, and especially in the world of technology, okay, there's all sorts of things out there. I see one on here that says playing Tetris. Who doesn't like playing those little games? It's fun. It's challenging. All right? So challenge the components of your mind with Rehab's help. All right? So when we look at cognitive performance from my standpoint, from a therapy standpoint, these are the things that we look at. Okay? People look at us like, oh, you just want to do a cognitive eval. Oh, that just means my memory, how quickly I forget things. That's not even close. All right? So here are some of the things we talk about. Sustained attention. Okay? How long can you focus on something before you lose your attention span? Okay? Simultaneous attention. So that's a big word for multitasking. Okay? Speed of processing. So as we get older, we lose the speed to process. Our brain takes more time to say, okay, what exactly are you asking me to do? Okay? This is pretty significant. I don't know if anybody knows anybody with Parkinson's disease, but it's pretty pronounced in Parkinson's. You'll see that those diagnosed people take a longer time to process what you're telling them. Okay? So then we look at flexibility. So what cognitive flexibility is, how quickly can you differentiate between things? Okay, if I'm asking you a question about numbers and I'm asking you a question about letters, how quickly can we go back and forth? Okay, working memory. All right, there's all different pieces to memory. Okay, you have your short term, you have your long term, you have working memory. Okay, so all these pieces are something different and they all need to be worked. Okay, response inhibition. Now what does that mean? I'm going to inhibit a response, so I want you to think differently. So if somebody says, let's see, what's your favorite meal? And you always say spaghetti. Okay, well now you can't say spaghetti and tell me your next favorites. Okay, so we're challenging you to think outside the box. Think of something different than your normal response, because that creates new pathways in your brain. Okay, think about this. This is I like this analogy to think about. Okay, you're driving down the road and there's construction. Okay, 2 miles from your house. Does that mean you can't get home? That path is blocked. Okay, no longer works. All right, same like your brain. So what do? You create a new path. So with cognitive training and cognitive reserve, we're doing the same thing. We're looking, okay, well, now your memory is starting to deteriorate. So how do we still help you to function and stay independent? Well, we create a new path. Your brain has the ability to create new neurons, okay? Now, we're not going to change your disease process, but we can help to compensate and find different ways to do some things. All right? Topographical orientation. All right? So what does this kind of relate to? Your orientation of where you are, what you're looking at, where you're going, different things like that. And category formation. A big question that we ask a lot of times is name some animals. All right? That's a category. You got to be able to correctly identify animals in categories. Fruit, if we ask you to name some fruit or something that's green. These are things that we look at because these are practices that help us, number one, to identify what's going on in your brain. Number two, it helps you to create new pathways. All right? So let's practice. Challenge your simultaneous attention and processing speed. We're going to complete this exercise twice, timing each episode. Okay? We're just going to try it, you and I. Let's see, let me get out a timer. Okay. I'm going to pull this chair over here for me. All right, you ready? So, let me see if I can start this timer. Real quick, we're going to start a timer. Okay. Oh, I need that. All right. So we're going to stand up. I'm going to explain it first. We're going to stand up. When we stand up, I'm going to start a timer. We're going to march in place while counting backwards from 20 by 2s. Okay? Sit down when we get to 0. We're going to stop the timer. We're going to record the amount of time. Then we're going to do it again. So we're going to do this twice. All right? Pastor Paul, you can join us. Ready? All right, we're going to stand up. I'm going to march. 18, 16. Count backwards by 2. 12, 10, 9, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. And sit down. That was a good practice. So roughly about 13 seconds. Okay? Now we all kind of understand a little bit more what we're doing. So we're going to try it one more time. Let me see if I can reset this. Okay? All right, ready? Let's stand up. Then 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. About 9.5 seconds. So we already improved. Okay? But what does that do? It's multitasking. We're doing 2 different tasks at the same time. But while we're doing an exercise for our body, we are challenging our brain by trying to count backwards by 2s. Okay? Anybody find that a little difficult? The first one was like, oh, wait a second. We got 2s by 2s. All right? But you got to practice, okay? And you'll get the hang of it. All right? So what are we looking at when we have cognitive reserve? What do we have? All right? Modifiable factors. Okay? So what is modifiable? Diet, exercise. It says substance use, so it's kind of your medication. Sometimes those are good to review with your doctor every once in a while. Education. We can all be educated, right? We can all learn something new today. I always say, I always learn something new almost every day. The world's changing every day, especially now, and it's changing rapidly. So we learn something new. Social support. So having social interaction and support is very important in our lives. We're social beings. That's what we do. That's what we live for, right? Positive effect. So when something happens that's positive, it makes us feel good. All right? So let's say, I always forget where I put my keys. Well, let's say after a while you start remembering, hey, I put my keys right there. I have an interesting story. I don't know if it's later on in one of these slides or not, but they say, all right, let's use the forgetting your keys as a good example. All right? That's not necessarily a cognitive impairment. You go home, you put your keys down somewhere, you forget where they are. Okay? So here's the process. You forget where your keys are. Okay? You look for your keys. You find your keys. Both sides are the same. Cognitive impairment and no cognitive impairment. The process is all the same. The last part is what differentiates a cognitive impairment and not a cognitive impairment. If at that moment when you pick up your keys and you said, oh yeah, I remember putting them there, that is not a cognitive impairment. If you picked up your keys and you said, I don't remember putting them here, okay, that is a sign that maybe I do have a cognitive impairment. Not all the time, but that is I like that example because it shows that, everybody forgets things. Just because you forget things does not mean that there's something really wrong with your brain. I forget a lot of things. I have 2 calendars that I keep. Every appointment that I have for work, every appointment that I have for home, and with my children and all those things, I have to write it down because otherwise I'll forget. But I have people coming at me all day asking me to do things, asking me for this, and meetings to attend. So it's hard to remember everything that I get asked every day. Does that mean I have a problem with my cognitive abilities? Not necessarily. All right? So stimulating activities or novel experiences. So I like to use this example too. When I was young, I never read. I cannot sit and read a book. I can't. Unless it has something that sucks me in that's interesting to me. Okay? So when I was in school, my first major was accounting, all right? Went to school, counting is easy for me. I'm really good with numbers. It bored the crap out of me, though. When I would study, I would fall asleep. Doesn't matter if I'm tired or not. If I read a book that's not interesting to me, I will fall asleep, okay? But if I read something that's interesting, it captivates me. I'm excited about it. I want to learn. So when you're doing activities, think about the things that excite you, okay? Because your brain is more stimulated. You're actually going to learn more, and you're going to stay attentive to that. Part of cognition that we look at is attention, okay? If you give me a book on biochemical engineering, I'm going to read it for about 30 seconds, and I'm going to be asleep. If you give me a book on muscle building, that's interesting to me. I enjoy that, okay? So lastly is cognitive training. All these aspects build up your cognitive reserve. And I tell people, just because you can score a 30 out of 30 on a cognitive test doesn't mean that you don't need to build up your cognitive reserve, okay? So now we've completed this one and how to build cognitive reserve. So the reason why I skipped to this is because our OTs and our speech therapists just went through a series of training with our corporate team, all right? We're going to start this program, I'm hoping, by October 5th, okay? There's a lot of parts in this program, and it is really entailed to how we can individualize it for everybody. Because we want to do things for you that are engaging, that are things that you're going to be interested in, okay? But that's why I skipped ahead to this one. So I'm hoping by October 5th we're ready to roll. We can start looking at different things. Now, with this program, there's a lot of different pieces, all right? So every month they try to, I know Wellness was doing presentations, and the part that this links to was engaging at any age. I'll just throw that in there, okay? So the catch and the problem, I shouldn't say problem, but there's pieces with this program. Okay, a lot of people do not have a cognitive diagnosis, okay? If you do not, it really causes a problem for us with billing issues, okay? So what we've done is we've developed kind of another avenue that we can go, okay? Sometimes insurance will not cover it, all right? And I don't want everybody just to think that that's the way it's going to go. But I want to be upfront and say there's some times where we look and we see you and insurance says they don't have a cognitive impairment. There's no reason to do cognitive therapy with them. Okay? So if you have questions, ask me. I'm pretty well rehearsed in all of this now. So I have most of the stuff pretty kind of familiar with how we're going to do some billing, how we're going to do some other things, okay? And I'm going to read this because they gave us a frequency asked questions thing. So the first question is people were asking, what is Thrive Mind? So I think everybody in this building has probably heard about Thrive, all right? So the 4 other components of Thrive, everybody's kind of well familiar with energy or kind of your cardiovascular health, your flexibility, your strength, and your balance. Most people have been through some kind of screen or kind of heard what those are. But mind is the 5th component. And the reason why we're trying to focus on that now is because it's kind of been lost in the way. You know, we focus on the other 4, but we forgot about this big piece of your mind. And we forget sometimes that we can train that. There are things we can do. So then the next question was, will Medicare cover Thrive Mind? In some cases, yes. Your speech or occupational therapy will do a free screen to determine if it qualifies for insurance coverage. We will let you know if it does, and we'll let you know if it does not. Okay? So ask questions. I have the formats. I have everything that I think that anybody would ask. All right? So then it says, should I ask about Thrive Mind if I have no problems with my memory right now? And this is something that, this is the reason for this presentation. So the answer is yes. Why? Because research shows, and with our stories that we told today, that you can build cognitive reserve through prescribed cognitive interventions in order to proactively prevent loss and create new pathways in your brain. Think of it as putting money into a savings account, okay? You're still putting that money in there, and it's still gaining interest, okay? Let's see. Can you describe how to get started with the process? It says call or visit your rehab director, and we will schedule with a mind screen. So simple as that. You can call down and say, hey, look, I saw the presentation. I'm interested in this. Can you tell me how it works? And I will be more than happy to. Okay? And I know that some of this is pretty private. So if you ever have questions, you can call my direct line. I think it's in the book 5650. Okay? And I'm more than happy to come and visit with you. We can set up a private meeting to answer any questions that you have. All right? So don't hesitate to call us and ask. There's a lot of pieces in this. And I'm going to put some of these, the brain training apps up by Debbie's desk if anybody wants to grab one. Do you have any questions? Perfect. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it. You're welcome.